On the opening drive for the Cowboys in Sunday's 44-24 loss to the Broncos, the first bad omen of the day came on a third-and-goal play from inside the 1-yard line, with Dallas set up perfectly to start the scoring with a touchdown. Instead, though, center Brock Hoffman was whistled for a false start penalty, moving the Cowboys to the 6-yard line. Dak Prescott threw an incomplete on the next play, and Dallas had to settle for a field goal. So it went for the Cowboys, who have struggled with penalties all season. At 8.4 penalties per game, Dallas ranks 29th in the NFL. On Sunday, there were 5 pre-snap penalties, starting with Hoffman, but including a false start by Tyler Guyton, an illegal formation by Jake Ferguson, and 2 offsides on defenders who simply lined up wrong. The Cowboys were penalized 80 yards on 9 penalties in the game. Penalties, coach Brian Schottenheimer said. We've been, I think, too consistent having penalties. We need to tighten that up. That's a discipline thing that we need to do a better job of as a coaching staff. Cowboys badly in need of discipline. But the question is, what will Schottenheimer do to tighten that up? The Cowboys have talked about penalties all season, and certainly things got loud in Denver on Sunday. That's no excuse for lining up wrong, however. Schottenheimer was asked if it may be time to start disciplining players who continue to make these mistakes. Even, it was suggested, cutting back their playing time and benching them for others. Yeah, absolutely, Schottenheimer said. The pre-snaps are the ones. That's a discipline thing, you know? That's something that needs to be looked at. Again, when you play on the edge, that is going to happen from a combative standpoint. But not lining up offsides. Not false starting on the half-yard line. But again, everything will be evaluated. I can promise you that everything will be evaluated. From the penalties to the calls that we made to players, everything. Brian Schottenheimer. Adversity is a good thing. Still, despite the frustration of sitting at 3-4-1 and seemingly unable to establish a consistent and winning style of play, Schottenheimer is hoping to find some positives coming out of Sunday. The team is facing adversity, and so far, it has responded well to the disappointments of this season. Good teams look at it, they look in the mirror, Schottenheimer said. Adversity is a good thing. No one likes to lose, and it's a humbling league when you come in here and play a good football team, and you get beat the way we did. But you get back to work. Cowboys need to do more than talk. But Schottenheimer and the Cowboys have been preaching that message for 2 months now, and still, consistency and discipline are lacking. It could be time to start sitting players who are costing the team with mental mistakes. Prescott did not go so far as to say that, but he did call on teammates to do some serious soul-searching. It's about what you're doing, what you're putting into this game, Prescott said. It's not just about Sunday. As I said, Sunday is a result of the week. It's about when you're in the building for one thing, or when you're outside of the building, the film study you're doing, all the work that you're doing to make sure you don't let your teammates down, and more importantly, that you're ready to make the plays when they come your way. Adversity reveals character. Adversity builds character. If that's true, safe to say, the Cowboys must be loaded with character by now. The Dallas Cowboys were riding high after a big Week 7 win, but they came crashing back down to earth after Sunday's 44-24 loss to the Denver Broncos. From the coaching staff, offense, and defense, it was a collective meltdown. Of course, only so much blame can go on the offense. While Dak Prescott was far from his best, he wasn't going to play perfect football the entire season. No other quarterback has a smaller margin for error than Prescott because the Cowboys' defense is a complete turnstile. On the call for CBS, former Cowboys quarterback Tony Romo implied exactly that as the final seconds ticked off the clock. They're going to hover around .500, and it's going to come down to a game or two for them to get into the playoffs because the offense is good enough to win half the games, Romo said. Tony Romo said the quiet part out loud about the Cowboys' season after Broncos' loss. That is a painful quote, largely because the Cowboys' offense is good enough to flirt with a top seed in the NFC along with the Eagles, Lions, Packers, and Buccaneers. If Dallas had just the 25th worst defense in football, they'd have at least 5 wins. According to ESPN's Todd Archer, the Cowboys have allowed 250 points this season. That is the 3rd most through the first 8 games of a season in franchise history. Only in 1960, their first year as a franchise, and in 2020 have they allowed more points to start a season. The Cowboys have winnable games upcoming against the Cardinals and Raiders. After that, they have the Eagles, Chiefs, and Lions in 3 straight weeks. They also face Justin Herbert and the LA Chargers and a Commanders team that should have a healthy Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. Prescott and the offense are good enough to top any of those clubs. Prescott entered Week 8 second in touchdown passes and second in passing yards. Javonte Williams entered the game second in rushing yards and third in rushing touchdowns. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb entered as one of 2 wide receiver duos averaging at least 80 receiving yards per game. But it doesn't matter because the defense can make the most ordinary quarterback look like an MVP. They did it with Russell Wilson in Week 2 and Caleb Williams in Week 3, and again with Bo Nix, who threw for 4 TDs and averaged 8.4 yards per pass attempt on Sunday. The Cowboys could fight for a playoff spot if the offense keeps producing. Sunday was a notable step back, and it underlined just how perfect they have to be to just stay competitive in games against good teams. It feels like ages ago that Trevon Diggs set the NFL on fire in his second year with a league-leading 11 interceptions and 2 pick-sixes. Just 4 years later, it would appear that Diggs and the Dallas Cowboys are heading for a divorce. The Cowboys placed Diggs on injured reserve Saturday, sidelining him for at least 4 games. He missed Week 7 due to a concussion sustained during an at-home accident, but team reporter Ed Werder noted the IR decision was primarily related to Diggs' surgically repaired right knee. Jerry Jones had said that Dallas didn't expect a long-term absence for Diggs on the heels of his concussion. That Diggs is now on IR because of his knee is the latest in a long list of strange happenings for the former All-Pro this calendar year. This is merely an opinion, but it would be more surprising than not if Diggs plays another game for the franchise. It feels like Trevon Diggs has played his last game for the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry and Stephen Jones were not happy with Diggs in the offseason. The team activated the $500,000 de-escalator in Diggs' contract over the summer for rehabbing away from the facility. The Joneses subsequently called out Diggs' leadership and implied that he didn't attack his ACL rehab with the desired vigor. Diggs got the last laugh by being ready for Week 1, but it became clear early in the season that he wasn't fully healthy. He's allowed a 154.9 passer rating in 6 games and a whopping 19.6 yards per reception, per Pro Football Focus. Beyond the field, Diggs has looked mentally checked out since the Cowboys traded Micah Parsons, his closest friend on the team. A video showed Diggs ignoring Dak Prescott's motivational speech before Dallas' massive Week 4 game against the Packers. That's inexcusable behavior. Diggs has also publicly taken issue with Matt Eberflus for not calling more man coverage. That gave the impression that Eberflus was losing the locker room, but the Week 7 win over Washington proved that is not the case. It might not be a coincidence that the defense had its best performance with Diggs watching from home. It's one thing for the media to criticize Eberflus' scheme. Diggs doing so sent a wrong message to the locker room and only gave rise to more Eberflus criticism. If Dak Prescott can avoid throwing Eberflus under the bus while playing like an MVP, Diggs certainly could have avoided throwing Eberflus under the bus while allowing nearly a perfect passer rating when targeted. That brings us to last week's concussion, which was suffered at a home accident in which details still haven't been revealed. There's justifiable frustration from both sides, but it feels like the Cowboys are tired of the Diggs headache. He's on the decline because of injuries and has a clear negative energy about him. The Cowboys can trade Diggs while he's on IR and save $9.1 million in cap space while absorbing a palatable $2.9 million in dead money per over the cap. That will be easier said than done, given that he isn't healthy, but Dallas might accept a 4th or 5th round pick to get his negative energy out of the building. If they can't trade him, they can cut him in the offseason with a post-June 1 designation and save $15.5 million in cap room with just $2.9 million in dead cap. Again, this is mere speculation. There haven't been any reports claiming that the Cowboys are shopping Diggs, and Diggs himself hasn't requested to be traded. But given the contentious timeline and mysterious nature of this IR stint, a divorce feels inevitable, whether it be before the November 4th trade deadline or right after the season.